sharing, what you're doing is sharing your body with other people. All right, when you're doing it with someone else. When you are just with yourself and you are experiencing pleasures of whatever kind, you are sharing that with God's source. Now, it may seem like a long way up, out, and down there, and there, and through there to get back to the point where God's source can even feel that little ripple that just went out. Yeah. But there is something to the old adage that every drop of rain that falls, not just a flower grows, but God knows it by name. You know, that kind of thing. And it has to do with the encryption because of the nature of the inhale back into source for recharge, back out. Everything gets imprinted and then recreated again. So everything, every person has the opportunity, if they can write a starfire or a whole system, a whole universe, will get its entire imprint brought back into the non-manifest state, which means it expands the potentialities of source manifestation. And then it gets exhaled back out again. So everything created in the outside actually gets to come back in the inside to leave a first imprint, as long as it can hold the Chris code and can pass through those gates, through the processes of light body activation. Next one, please. I want to see what I have there. I just want to get to the Rishite spirals. Again, these are the early things on the 15-dimensional time matrices, just to show the consistency in the diagrams right from the beginning. Same stuff we've been teaching from the beginning. This is the pillar of power, a little bit more complicated. I think some of these diagrams show up in the English Michael Maryline workshop. I think some of these are in. So as far as some of these are already released in a rough but at least functional form, it just shows again the pillars and how when with the Veka system, it's showing them separated. So you see the different structures right here. It's just really showing you the Veka density and primal light fields and the core set that have to do with the Akasha or the Eka level in the center. And what the pillar of power does is these systems, actually, the Cathara grids, move up through each other. Not only does the ethos from down here, that's not shown, come up here into the density level, but sometimes the density level with its ethos will come up here. At the same time, the primal light field comes down here, and the eros comes down with it. And at the same time, these fold in. And what it does is it folds back up, because this was created from a center point and folded outward and then expanded, right? So it closes back up and sometimes closes all the way back up and pulls back into the next domain level in, which for an outer Eka system and its Veka system, it would be pulling into what they're calling the middle level or the Edons. And these are all just, this was just to remind you of the pillar of power. This pillar of power has to do with, what I won't even touch right now, the lotus points that we've been using in the Cathara 2.3 manual that have to do with circulating the energy running through. Next one, please. I'm going to get through this before I fall over and before you fall asleep. Right. This is just to remind you of the lotus arcs and the sets of lotus arcs that are literally, where you see the arcs, they're actually the arcs that run around the balls. All right, so when you're phasing arcs, you're rubbing light balls together in order to make them spark. So they send their sparks back down into, I think they go into the seed atom, and then the seed atom probably sends them down in to, to the core light stuff, and down to the Taran. And after a certain point of triggering the Taran, it probably starts a tachyon cycle, and that's when you get the whole burst coming back out, where you get a backflow return on whatever sparks were generated. So we've been doing the techniques for a while, even before we understood about tachyons or any of that, but it's all connected. Next one. There's just showing you when you bring your arcs up together, right, completely, and the lotus points activates. If this is you here in your density Cathara grid, and this is your ethos grid pulling up, right, it's starting to come up, and the arcs are almost fully closed in one set of arcs. That means if each one of these is attached to a set of light balls, it's pulling the light balls together to where they completely merge. And there's a core spark that happens when two light balls, say in a monad configuration, pull together, or in whatever configuration they're in. So some of them phase this way, others of them phase this way, up and down. When you're breathing the ethos pillar up and down, you're breathing the light cells up and down in order to make them spark. And those sparks will collect within certain centers, within the seed atom centers, but also within what we call the Iyumbi, the Azure, and the Rajna flame centers, as well as the Adrana and the Mahadra centers. So I just wanted to show you where all these pieces fit with that. Next one, please. There's you in the middle of that, showing you with your arcs open, where your light cells are phased down, right? And this one is up and that one is down. And when you pull the arcs together, like you saw in the other diagram, where these arcs are actually all up here and almost completely in the center column, that's when these are fully in the center column, this fully aligns up here, and this fully comes down here, and the central vertical column actually fully opens, and then all sorts of interesting things can take place when that fully happens. That's when you can phase up and like move into the Eka level, where you pull out of the density grid and up into the Eka level. We were going to do that a while back, but then the Vecca system lost its staff connection to the Eka, and that it's not an option anymore for anything in this 15-dimensional time matrix to do that, because this matrix is falling. However, it is an option to go through the middle and inner hubs. And there are some people who are capable of activating tachyon cycles in order to be able to ride a starfire cycle with Eartha, because the Eartha part of the grids are going to go through a starfire cycle with the rest of anything viable left in this Vecca system. They will go through a starfire rebirth cycle. And we are preparing for that now, and it could be anywhere. It could be anywhere from 3 days to probably 2047 before we might see what that might look like, but I don't think it's going to be 2047. I think we're going to see some interesting changes. We're already seeing the weather changes and weirdness popping up too often as far as weather and climate and what the planet is doing. It's reacting to the frequencies of the fall that are running in it. And fortunately, it's at least still nestled within the bosom of Eartha, let's say. So when the Eartha gates open, which they are progressively doing now, we will progressively get back the ability, by connecting with the Eartha elemental field, to regenerate the crystal spiral, to be able to activate our tachyons, to not get caught in that fall, and to help others who still have that capacity to not get caught in it either. Next one, please. Just to remind you, all of that is part of that anatomy is the crystal body structure that K23 manual is all about, which I won't even go into now. I just wanted to remind you, yes, that's in there too. That fits. That's when you put them all together and you inhale them all together, and it activates what's called the chariot of fire and the diamond sun crystal body, which is many layers of that. Next one, please. What? Yeah, that's all right. I don't need that one anyway. That's all right. I'm not going to go. Yeah. Yeah, no. I just want to get to Rushate, because that's where I want to get Rushate to spiral. The whole thing was called, that whole structure of the encryption was called the stairway to heaven. And we have our personal one that is our light body structure, and the cosmos has one too, that is literally stairways of stargates that are the ascension chambers. They form the ascension chambers by which beings come and go on the winds of creation into and out of manifestation. Next one, please. We're getting here, finally. I've been trying to get to that Rushate spiral for a while. This is just to show you what is called the Divine Blueprint Encryption Template, right? It is a shield encryption that you will find in relation to Cathara grids. I don't know if you can see down here, but a shield, there's one shield that runs here. There's actually a whole bunch of shields that we're going to look at more of tomorrow, because there's little dimensional ones, and that's the ones we need to understand a bit more about if we're going to understand about what sexuality is about. But the shields in general carry, natural shields carry the base 12 monadic imprint. It is the imprint of the monads, the divine blueprint imprint. All right, it's an encryption. It's shaped basically like this. It's in this shape. All right, so this is showing you the 12 groups of 12. We've had this one out for a long time. In fact, we were doing stands, literally doing spin stands with large groups of people, and kind of like trying not to make public spectacles of ourselves, but running Merkaba in these configurations at certain points to try to assist the planetary grid. So it was kind of neat. I miss those days, actually. It was like fun. Won't go into this. I just want to show you this for now, because if you can think of that, it's built on what's called the ruche. All right, the ruche is the basic configuration, or the crisscross, as it's called. It's the basic configuration of the divine blueprint arrangement that comes from the one that times 3 goes into like the 48 times 3 becomes 144. It is holding that, that encryption. And that is the core encryption that all the things in the outside world are supposed to be built on, or are naturally built on to begin with. So we got the ruche encryption. You have it as the divine blueprint. And the next one, please. There goes the back again. It connects to all sorts of things, including the DNA template, which is directly connected to this. Because off here, if you bring each of these if you see this, there are vortices that form through these shields, the shield of the Ruche divine blueprint. If you take these shield points all the way out, you end up with a clock configuration with the, I believe, 30 degrees between each of those, and it gives you a full clock configuration. This is a little bit off because that's as close as I could do on the computer way back when. But that shows you that this Ruche and the DNA template are connected with each other. And what's interesting is this configuration. This is the beginning of seeing what the Ruche spiral is. That is connected directly to this divine blueprint. And in fact, if you looked at this as a plate or a shield like this, horizontally running this way like a plate, you would look at the Ruche spiral currents as each one of these would be a pillar of energy, right, standing up in that configuration, but then they spin together, and at certain points they cross through each other, and then they open up again to the shield on the next dimensional level. Then they close up again, and they form a particular shape. And I'll show you what that is, but it's based on this as their base plate for where these pillars run and then spiral, and it's the spiraling that gives them the twisting effect. And this is your Ruche spiral. These drawings were another set that I was like, can we please never have to do that again? Of course now. We're not done with them either. That's why they're still messy. They have millions of dots everywhere. What these are important to understand is they're based on this template. This template would be positioned, like I had said, as a plate, right? A shield underneath that had pillar currents running, and then with the spins of the currents where the outside set of the Ruche, right, would go clockwise, and the inside set would go counterclockwise. It would create a set of counter-rotating electromagnetic fields. 8 on the outside, 4 on the inside would give you your basic 12. And these currents, because of the spinning, the spiraling, they have a direct relationship with the full dimensional scale. And they run, the currents run through the center of the body, and they expand and contract. I'll show you on the bigger ones in a minute. First of all, we can look at these. These would be the inner ones that correspond to the 4 inner points of the Ruche that would come out of the 4 inner points, right? But remember, it's a plate like this, so they'd be coming up this way, 4 this way in the inside. And these would be the outer ones that correspond to the 8 outer points or outer pillars spinning. Next one, please. And see how they spin up the Cathara grid there. Just look at them a little bit more closely, and these are still really messy. This is showing them in their dormant position, where, if you'll notice, between if these are living energy currents spiraling up and down, I believe I think the magnetic ones, these spiral from below up, and the electrical ones spiral from above down, the central vertical column. I think that's what these are. I haven't done these in a while. Yep. And these are actually spinning ethos and eros frequency up and down through the central vertical column. All right. When they're in their dormant state, you can't really tell here, but they have little inactive vortices called chakras. And I'll show you what they look like. This is the electrical set, this is the magnetic set, and this is what they look like in their dormant state together. Okay? Now watch what happens as they go. This is messy. When you inhale, arcs up, pull your pillar up. They collapse up like an accordion a bit. And first of all, certain vortices in these spaces begin to open. See, I'm trying to work on these diagrams. They just told me today I needed all of these. I was like, yeah, right. I still got like 50 that need more words from the other set. You want me to start doing paste ups and cleanups on these? They're coming, but not right now. What it at least can show you is when they were stretched out in their dormant state, just hanging there natural, they had certain relationships with each other, where as far as these spheres that would be the inside ones had certain relationships with these what look like discs that would be the outside spirals. This becomes significant when you see what happens on the exhale. So that's an inhale where it pulls up. The Ruche pulls up. When it's pulling up, it's actually charging. It's actually pulling together sparks, right, from the arcs that had gone up and made the balls spark. And the balls happen to be the monadic balls that are 2 of them up and 2 of them down below the feet. And when you inhale, it opens and it allows the sparks to be coming into the seed atom. Now those sparks will eventually make their way out and come into your crystal body through your shields, and they will do that through something called chakras. Okay, next one, please. The chakras form when you exhale. The Rushite spiral does something fascinating. Remember, there's only one set of these running up and down the middle, and one set of these running the outside. Well, they polarize, and they actually open up a tube in between both of them, and you actually have 2 sets, as if there were 2 Rushis, but overlapped in a Biveka pattern, all right, for each of the chakras. When that polarization of the living light that's running through the central column occurs, these vortices open in between the areas. These run on. If this was where Cathara, let's say, I won't use that one. I'll use, let's see. All right, let's say here, imagine your Cathara grid, and that's Cathara Center 5 hiding behind there, right? Okay. There's a chakra right above it and a chakra right below it. The chakras are vortices, where the Cathara centers can be looked at as spinning spheres of energy. All right. So these are actually vortices that are spinning energy out or in. Some of them, move the energy in. Now, these form when the polarization of the Rushite spiral occurs. They activate. That's when what were dormant chakras activate. And when they activate, they bring energy that had on the inhale been pulled in to the seed atom. They then exhale it, and it spins out into each dimensional level of your shields and your crystal body. There's actually part of how you manifest your hologram repeatedly. So this is how the chakras are formed. There are certain seals that occur. If you notice here, this is in the exhale polarization phase, the active phase of the chakras. If you notice here's a chakra vortex here on this line, and this line happens to be the 7.5 line, frequency 7.5. Below it you'd have D7, right? Then you have 6.5 frequency. Then you have D6, 5.5. This is how these scales run. All right, so it tells you what frequency bands each chakra is running and it's supposed to be running. Now, if you have, pick any one of these, if you have, say, the 7.5 chakra, notice all of these electrical chakras are popping out at the 0.5 scales. All right, they're not pointing at, the Cathara centers are on where the D number would be, like dimension, whatever. Then between those dimensions, there's the 0.5 level of that dimension. And the chakras run on the 0.5 level of dimension. Now, with these chakras here, some of them face, if you look at this, right, and you realize it's actually inside, right, but here is not a vortex on this one, but there is one between these two shields, right? So you have a chakra vortex here, pointing this way, right? Here you have one up above, and here you have one down below. And if you put these in here where they belong, what it means is you have one set of outer vortices with a seal on the inner ones that are closed unless you inhale, which changes the relationships and bring these vortices into alignment with those. So there are certain chakras that have open vortices, where see how these face each other? There's an open one here, and there's an open set here, right? Okay? If you remember, this is inside of that, right? It's inside of, they're all together. It's hard to see them in this drawing, but that's when they're all together. It means this one would have the active vortices of the inner four that correspond with the inner 4 points of the Rushe, or the Rushite, which is the Rushe configuration, and also the vortices that would correspond with the outer points of the Rushe. Now, there are 8 outer points that form 4 vortices, okay, in the Rushe and the outer points of the Rushe. And then there are 4 inner points that, between them, form 4 little vortices. So you're dealing with basically a set of 4 electromagnetic vortices that run through each other, and then also there's one that comes vertically out the top and horizontal and vertically down to the bottom. So you have a configuration of chakras of vortices with 4 horizontal vortices, 4 bigger ones on the outside, and some of the chakras have 4 little ones activated on the inside. and which would be the magnetic ones. And you have the one running up and the one running down at each dimensional level, which means at each dimensional level, there is, at each 0.5 level, you have a chakra that opens that comes from the energy running between two shields that connect to the Kathara center area, or the center point of that particular area of the shield. I'll show you what this looks like in relation to the Kathara grid. We're getting there. This is the one I'm still working on cleaning up. However, over here, what it'll show you, I wanted to get this done for today, but I didn't, but I'll try for tomorrow. If you could bring that over just a little bit more, please. This way. Yeah, okay, I got to get the end off that one. Okay, what this is showing you is the dimensional scale, both the D scale, which would be like, D1, D2, D3, D4, D5. They're the frequency bands of that dimension. And they're showing you the 0.5 scales, right? So you can see where those alignments are. They're showing you where the Kathara centers and things. I don't have them numbered yet, but, regular Kathara grid where you'd have, like, K1, K2, K3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? Kathara centers. The Kathara centers are running on the D lines, right? If you took the center point of the Kathara center spheres, they'd be in line with a D number and not with a 0.5 number. But in between, that corresponds to each of those vortices that you saw on the other thing that I still have to fill these back in, but these are that same spirals, right? This is the electrical one. This one would show the vortices running on this line, on this 0.5 line. This would be the chakra, all right? There'd be two coming out the side. There'd be one in front, right? And there'd be one in back that matched it. So they're the four vortices, the horizontal vortices of the chakra that corresponds to density D 5.5. All right. Now 5.5 happens to be, and this is where it gets tricky if you don't have the whole thing to analyze, which we finally do have them. We know who's on first. These frequencies here are telling you what frequency which chakra is running, okay, or are supposed to be running. So if we have, I'll start with something easy because they get multiple down here. But if we take chakra 2, where we know chakra 2 is like down in this region, it's the sacral chakra, right? Okay. Chakra 2 is the set of vortices that are right here, that are between this shield, and these will all have numbers on them, so you'll see which ones they are. So this is chakra 2 set, and that corresponds to D2.5. All right, we take it up. Chakra 3, we know that that's solar plexus. That corresponds to D4.5. The Iumbi corresponds to 3.5 frequency. Okay, then you take it up higher. You got chakra. You have Kathara center 5 here. Then you have chakra 4, corresponds to D5.5. Then it gets really wacky when you get up to here, which I'll get into more tomorrow, because when you get to normally you say, well, 5 should be next, right? Well, yeah, sort of, but not exactly, because the next one is actually chakra 8, front, because it slants down where it links in the pineal, and it slants down and comes out in this area, actually below where chakra 5 in this area is going to be. Right? So it shows you what frequencies is running the frequency of its number, but also combined with the frequency of where it's interfacing. So all of these are what came off of this Richete spiral, making its little vortices, because these are all spinning. These spiraling currents are spinning, and they're creating spin-off vortices. And those spin-off vortices are the chakras that people talk about all over the place, and they have all sorts of certain characteristics to them and that kind of stuff that Barbara Brennan's books were very, very good at explaining to you. But there's a lot more to it than that. But she, I think, mostly talks about the first 7. We've always used a 15-chakra system because there are 15 dimensions, and there are chakras that connect to the frequencies of each dimension under normal circumstances, which we are not under, but we're going to be reconnecting those chakras and opening them again. Now, I'm hoping to finish some more of these drawings by tomorrow, if I ever get there. Can we move this over a little bit? Wait, this one, please. Yeah. Now notice these lines come right over from what dimensions they're running, right over here, right through those vortices. These will be filled back in, but they're the same drawings that you saw right before with the spirals. I just haven't filled them back in again because I had to white out the lines to try to make them straight because it didn't have a triangle. So I was trying to use a ruler to get them to be straight on my lap. kind of, yeah. So it was a bit of a mess. But anyway, that will look like a clean version of the drawing from the other side. This is showing you the configuration. Now, each of these points, right, where each of these chakras are, shows you where they are in the Cathara grid, what frequency they're running, what spirals they're running, sets they're running through. And this shows you where they are on the body. And these are going to show you wherever you have a chakra, I don't have the numbers in yet, but wherever you have a chakra, you would have your configuration of vortices. Now, some of them that have vortice seals would open these inner ones only on the inhale, and others would have them both running at the same time, a double set. And there would be 4 of these. You'd have one in front, one spiral coming out the front, one going out the back, and one going out each side. 4. If you had the magnetic ones activated 2 in that particular chakra, you would have the double ones doing the same thing. Now, down here is where we get into chakra 1. And we're going to look at this more closely tomorrow, because this gets very, very interesting, especially when you tip the body on its back and spread its legs a little, and you can see what the chakras are doing under there and what they're connected to. You'd be amazed what parts are connected to what, and what happens when, all right, we know we can move our arcs up and down and spark, make our monads spark and bring sparks down into our central vertical column through the Rushate spiral, and then those sparks can go out our chakras and energize us. There's all sorts of other things that can be done when those sparks are directed consciously in a positive way that's meant for healing of your light body. And it has to do with what the chakra, the first chakra is connected to. Because the first chakra is connected to what are called the sacral seals, which are actually the sacral seals, but also the sexual seals that control very specific parts of the bodies, parts we've all heard of, that are definitely between our legs, be we male or female. And these connect directly in. The Rushate connects directly in, and there's a mutation in the Rushate configuration on the dimensional levels, a phase locking of, which means locking it into a position that it's not supposed to be in, has caused the vertical currents of the Rushate to run all twisted, which means they shift the chakras into a little bit different position than they're supposed to be, and they combine different sets of frequencies that aren't supposed to run in them. And this creates all sorts of messy buildup, especially between male and female, Ire and Mane, polarity interrelationships. It creates all sorts of static and all sorts of wacky chemicals in the bodies of both. And this is a big part of why there has been such misery for so long now between the genders, the people who carry male and female bodies. So we'll look at this more tomorrow. I wanted to get you here to the point where we could understand where the light body structure, where the first particle, where tachyons, all of that have to do with this. When you are doing keys, what you are getting ready to do is bring the core currents out from the original core layers of creation. Bring them out where they can feed and heal and sustain and reset the Rushate spiral, which has the power then to reset the distortions in the dimensional shields that are controlling the chakras. And we're going to be taught, I think, probably in Phoenix, some techniques on how to directly expedite that process by using the elemental encryption codes on the specific chakras that are governed by the particular elemental forces that go with that particular pattern. Let's say you have a symbol and it has to do with the encryption of a family of consciousness that is, like, say, the elements of hydrogen, or, say, a certain dimensional set of frequencies that, say, go with chakra 5, which means it'd be about chakras up here and energy systems up here. Right? We would use specific encryptions, core encryptions that go with the starborn cycle of those elementals that actually help the elementals to come back in their natural, like to put the natural imprint back. That would allow us to connect to the eartha level in elemental kingdoms that already and still have that imprint, that haven't been corrupted and twisted by the twisted imprints in the planetary grids. So it's a big project, but it starts with an understanding of where these parts come together. And I hope I've covered enough of this for now that we can pick up with this one tomorrow, and hopefully some of the drawings that show you specifically, because this is where it gets interesting. What does that part do? What's connected down there? What runs what? And what happens when you put a girl and a guy together? What do these chakras do? It's fascinating to find out what we have been doing all of these years. when we are engaging with someone. And what is the attraction with female to female or male to male? What energy happenings are happening there? You know, I mean, they're okay too, and certain bodies are more like keyed toward that. But there are certain things in common with both of them that have to do with the body structures themselves, that have to do with, okay, what's my Rusite spiral up to? And what does that have to do with, you know, those parts directly? Because these currents do run directly through the physical anatomies, and there are certain things that can be done with the physical anatomies that can expedite the healing process, but they can also, on a good day on a safe planet, it's really lovely to be able to share making love with someone physically where you get into such a high frequency state together that you blend and you feel like one being, and both of you physically begin to disappear because you've raised the frequency together so high, because your keys are singing with each other's, and you can actually turn into a collective ball of identity and energy, dissolve the bodies temporarily, experience states in that state, and then without losing your individuation either. You don't just like get absorbed by each other. You just know yourself and the other, and complete understanding, absolute love. There are things that on a safe planet, it is safe to open yourself to do in a Christian society on a safe planet. Right now, you can do a lot of these things. You can begin to learn how to do these things. But the first thing you need to do is learn how to protect yourself, okay? You don't want to just go like, you know, oh, I know how to play with my base chakra now, and just like, let's go, you know? You can get yourself in trouble that way, because there's a lot of things that would like to play with your base chakra, and most of them don't have bodies and be glad to have yours. And take it right down a black hole for you. You don't want that to happen, and it can happen with those openings. So we're going to look at tomorrow, as well as understanding these parts a little bit better and how these energies run as far as sexuality goes. We're also going to look at, before we leave tomorrow night, some ways that you can do safe sex. Okay, and I'm not talking about condoms. I mean, nothing against condoms, you know, whatever. They're probably useful on the outside. However, you could use, just figure a big condom coming down over your main vertical pillar. Yeah, like, while you're at it, my energy condom. Right? God, something like that, actually, but not exactly. Yeah. So we're going to learn a bit more, I think, than we started knowing at the beginning of this workshop about what do all these light body and wonderful spiritual parts have to do with the parts of me that are called sexual parts. And I'm hoping they give me real close to one graph that I've been trying to get done for a couple of weeks. And I only get little pieces, and then it shatters again, and I can't get the rest. That has to do with understanding more about who are these elementals. Who are these elemental consciousness fields? Because I have a feeling they are key to a real release and a freedom in ourselves. It's almost as if we've been held hostage by elementals in our own bodies, because they have been held hostage by the larger elemental forces on a planet who's been held hostage by distortions in its natural light body structure. So if we can begin to tune into eartha elementals and begin to get free, there's a feeling of at oneness and homeness in your body that you can feel, where it doesn't feel like a prison, because sometimes it can. You know, like, gee, yeah, I'll send tomorrow. Well, I could if it wasn't for the darn thing. You know what I mean? Can't get through a gate. You know, that kind of thing. There's a lot of joy that can be known in the body, and not just in making love with lower parts and chakras, but also in heart bonding. There are safe ways that you can begin to experience the love bond, and without causing yourself, you know, like just leaving yourself open to be easy prey to things that would like to take your body. So we'll try to wrap all those things up together. And I think one of the highlights, hopefully, will be of really seeing a little bit of what those parts do. The parts we know are sexual parts, and what energy runs there. Who knows? I mean, when they told me I was going to be teaching sacred sex, I went, you've got to be joking. It's like, would you teach me first, quick? Because I'm an android, I know that much, and I'm not really good at this. I don't understand what's going on down there. It took me a while to get the legs to work after the walk-in. You know, I'm lucky I can walk. And they chuckle at me, and they say, it's all right. They do, lovingly, gently. Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out. Yeah. So I'm learning this with you. And almost blushing, you know, because it's like one of those, you know, you'd laugh if you knew how many times I ran Vestal Virgin camps where we saved it for source. Right? We're total celibate, right? And now they have me teaching sacred sex, and I think it's really, really, really funny. I guess I needed to be more well-rounded. Anyway, really, yeah. But there is something that is at the end of this that I'm hoping they let us know tomorrow, aside from the fact that we're going to be doing activations tomorrow at whatever time they say they have to do with picking up the crystal connection, that has to do with rebirth of the monad. But I'm hoping they get me a little bit more information on there is something magical that can be created, and it can also be abused and has been on this planet, but they can be created with these energies. And it's like, a part of me feels like, oh, a part of me knows that, and this part doesn't, and I can't wait to remember, because it's something neat. And I'm hoping that neat comes through now and not like in Phoenix or Virginia Beach. I'm not sure where it's coming, but I feel it there. So I hope it was worth staying up late for tonight to get the rundown on how these things go together, and the fact that, yes, they do anchor through your base chakra, and yes, that does mean your female parts if you're a girl and your male parts if you're a boy. And even the ones you don't like to think you have, you know, that you like to pretend you wish you didn't have kind of thing, you know, there's certain parts you really wish you didn't have. Some of us do anyway. Yeah, like, oh. But anyway, they're one of the main. That's one of the main centers too. It's all connected to the cranial sacral seals, and that's all connected to the entire light body structure and the ability to open the natural starborn structure within the body. So we're going to learn some interesting things. I'm going to learn some more things. Hopefully, what we've talked about so far is. It hasn't been, I tried to avoid as much of the middle light body stuff because we've done that in 3 different workshops in a quick sequence, but enough for new people to catch up on. And I can't keep doing that to everybody that keeps coming back because I'm going to bore you to death. You know, so I did leave that middle section out. I hope that tonight was worth it because you had to wait for a while just for us to get those original graphs down, the ones you saw first. If we could just put on that one so we can just, as we're leaving, we could, the one pretty one with the Rosetta, what's it? Rosetta. No, the Rosetta one. We could put that on top of the Rosetta, actually, if we could find the Rosetta. I just wanted to put the Rosetta up once more. I don't know why I was getting the urge to do that. There's the Rosetta. That's the one with the lines in it, though. Anyway. Well, we'll have to dig it out for tomorrow because I'm not finding it easy here. Oh, wait, there's one. Let's try this. It may not be the big one, but at least it's one of them. Yeah, let's try this to see what it looks like with the keys, the 1728 keys in color. Oh, cool. Yeah, they all should be, actually. All those layers would be sets of different rainbow colors and intensities. And I hope we get to do it at some point, because it would be so gorgeous, especially on a poster to meditate in. We're going to be taught how to journey with these and how to do certain projection things using encryption codes to be able to go down in through the centers and actually to access different locations. There's a book that a long time ago part of me wanted to write, the part of me called Azar, and it was called Time Traveler's Guide to Symbols and Their Uses, where encryption is how you travel once you learn to travel in light body. And you first learn to travel in light body by using the lightest part of it, which tends to be your mind, before you worry about dragging your atomic structure through. So we're going to begin with learning how to do those things. And I think we're starting in Phoenix to introduce some of the Time Traveler's Guide stuff. And it's focused on beginning the process of clearing the chakras. As far as it's a mess what's happening with the chakras right now, as far as the base chakra especially, and what energy that's controlling. There's also something else that's surprised that has to do with the chakras. It's a good one. I don't know what it is yet. They didn't tell me. So there's going to be a progressive. Like I said, you don't have to come to all the workshops, but it is a progression of information that by the end of it, you should have some very interesting new insights on how all that works together and how you might be able to apply it in your life in a way that you might feel a bit better about where you're at as far as your relationships and, you know, your own self and your relationship with sexuality and spirit and all that. So on that note and on that picture, I think I will say good morning and good night and let us all get a bit of sleep. And thank you for your patience. Let me see what time it is. Oh, God. All right. Okay. Well, I have to go collapse at least for an hour because I don't think I could hold a pen straight at this point. Thank you for your patience. But I think it was worth, well, it was funny. I'm sitting up there and thinking, okay, well, they said, they have the dinner thing, so I guess it was, 8 o'clock's all right. And I'm doing these graphs, and I'll show you the graphs they threw at me at the end because I don't want to spoil the surprise. If anybody's it blushes easily, you might want to look away because they're a bit, pronounced. Right? Well, anyway, tonight what I would like to do, and sometimes as far as the time involved and the amount of stuff we cover, sometimes less is more, but sometimes it's not. We covered quite a bit last night, but tonight I want to kind of pick up where we left off. I didn't even bother trying to put words on those other diagrams. We talked about them enough where you saw the sequence of things like tachyons and tachyon cycle, how that generates the sparks, and those kind of things. What we need to do is bring that information down and anchor it into the 3D space. I'm just trying to get my thingies in order here because it looks like I put them on the wrong end of the pile. Wait a minute. Yeah, just give me a second here. That's the beginning one. There we go. But we're going to get to a very interesting ending in this, where we will indeed find out what an orgasm is. And right at the end, we'll find out what's been done with them for the last several 100,000 years on this planet. And we'll also find out the gift that we're being given the opportunity to receive if we want it. It's not something we have to do, but it is a gift that is being offered by the Edonic races of the middle domains. And it has to do with what they call it, the fast-track evac, actually. That's one of its purposes, if necessary. But we'll get into what that is, because it has everything to do with keys and the harmonic key cycles, tachyon cycles, and that kind of thing. But surprisingly, the first time they mentioned the word, the shadi, to me, in this whole period we've been here, was about 15 minutes while I was putting the final whiteout on so you could read the final 3 graphs that they insisted I get done before I come down, because that was the most important part of the whole presentation this evening for everybody, as far as they were concerned. And they brought the shadi, which it's been one of those vague things, like a place called Shadi. I'd like to go there. Where is this place exactly? Right? It had a feel to it. And they introduced it, I believe, in Morocco when they brought the Moroccan songs through. I'm thinking, oh no, I hope it's not going to be another demon fest like it was in Morocco. But no, it's not. It's actually something quite sacred. And we're doing a bit of a leap from where we are. Remember I had said that we covered how the starborn cycle works on the first level, and that was for the core domains. And then there were 2 other levels of expansion before you got to the Eucatharista outer domains. Well, we're kind of doing a leapfrog into, as if we'd had how the Eden one is created. We're getting to the end of that cycle where we're going to understand a little bit more about what the seed atom of the Eden is, because it's different. The seed atoms on the outer domains are connected to the ones in the inner domains, but there's a progressive creation of seed atoms at the end of every one of those cycles. You have the unici as the first one in the core, and then there's 2 others until when you get out here where you have the Yanesa seed atoms. So we're going to learn about something called the Shadi seed atom. And I'll let you know that much, that it is the seed atom for the Eden worlds, as far as the inner domain, the middle domain Eden worlds. And we have our own out here when we're working with our tachyon cycles and using technique to build the keys in our Taran. Now, our Taran is located in our Azure point, and that's where a seed atom and the Taran and everything behind it would be located in a manifestation. That's on our level, in the outer domains. It's interesting to see where that same place from the middle domains interfaces with our domains here. And there's going to be a gift given as an opportunity for those who want to participate in a certain activation that's coming tonight. Everybody can participate in one level of it if they want to, but there's a special gift that I don't know, I can't even describe it yet, but I know where it's going, but I can't put the words on it yet, but that will come. It's going to be live, and it's going to be something that will help you if you want to receive it. it has to do with the tachyon cycles we have been moving through since February in Tenerife, when we did the activation of the taurine and begin the process of our own starborn cycle on our own seed atom levels. This is going to take us into an opportunity for a quantum leap, quite literally. And with that quantum leap, there is a huge protection field that can be generated with the frequencies that come with it. You're progressively building the ability to be safer and safer the more you work with even the regular technologies that we are using. But this is given as a gift. They haven't said yet why, but I can imagine there's probably a reason in the grids if they're feeling that they need to do this now. So we're going to go through. We're going to pick up where we left off yesterday and move through some of the key things that we need to remember from yesterday. And then we're going to bring it into sacred sex and what that actually means. We're going to find out what an orgasm is and why they wanted us to learn the things and touch base with the things we talked about yesterday before we even attempted to understand what sacred sex is, because they're very, very connected. So I will find one of my lovely wordless diagrams. Oh, this one has words, except they're microscopic and you can't read them. All right. Thank you for helping very much. Yeah. Okay, got them. I got it. Yeah. These were the three that took all day. We'll save those for the end. Okay. Now, where was I going before they hit me with Shadi? Sacred sex. Oh, yeah, sacred sex. Let's get to the point, right?
Cut to the chase.
Right. I just wanted to see what flow I was moving on. Okay. Because there's key things in here. I just want to see if I still want to do this, or now that they told me this, if I want to move them around a little bit. Okay. Yeah, these are just kind of like, I'm going to do a quick thing back through the sequence to activate the sequence that we learned yesterday in the template. Okay. This is just for a very quick refresher. Again, this still doesn't have like words you can read on it yet. This is simply the summary sheet that had to do with the tachyon cycle. When we went through the diagrams, the large diagrams that explained how the taurine pulses and how it creates sets of sparks, chelona sparks that form chelons, and the chelons collect within the particule, and then how there's a certain point where enough chelons are manufactured and they become harmonic keys, then how the harmonic keys go through quantum resolution and play with their charge a bit so they equalize the charge that will be stored in the keys. And this is a bit of a key point as far as our discussion later in the evening, that with the formation of the harmonic keys, where we have a bass tone key that's a set of 6 sparks and an overtone key that's a set of 6 sparks, and the overtone key has more quantum, even though it still has 6 sparks, the sparks have more quantum in each one of them. And the resolution is when the overtone set of sparks gives off part of the quantum of each of its sparks, forms the kasha key with what's left, and gives an equal quantum of its charge to the bass tone key in order to form what's called a joule. And that creates a quantum equilibrium unit that is a crystal key. So we have crystal keys and kasha keys, which are the piece of missing quantum. And when they activate, they come together. This has a lot to do with first creation, and it also has a lot to do with sacred sex. And we'll get to that. So this is why I wanted to start here again, to get us back to let's remember the keys and just the basic. There is a flow to this cycle that the chelona create, chelona sparks create, chelons then release their sparks at a certain point, and then harmonic keys are created. They go through quantum resolution, and then they begin the process of forming the 12 harmonic keys. Once they're activated, will form one tachyon. So there are cycles that will form tachyons, and then tachyons reach a certain critical mass level where the entire partikey ignites and it opens the diamond door, or the nada ore. And when the nada ore opens, the entire partikey and the entire taurine unit and the triad all pull back into source and replicate. And that pull back into source thing is kind of an interesting point, as well as I'm talking about these things, these little key points that we're going to come back to later after we get into a discussion on sacred sex. Because things like the little diamond door that is the center of a partikey is important, because we have one, not just the one in our Azure. There's another one, and that's going to be very key to the activations tonight and to the gift that the beloveds are going to offer for those who want the extra quantum. And it has to do with key building, and it has to do with the period we're in right now. Hello. Which is, we're in the, what is it, I forget, number 4 tachyon cycle, where we've already gone through the rebirth of the Maiad, I believe, was in Shasta. Is that right? Am I right? Shasta was Maiad, right? Yeah. Which means the Maiad rebirth, the Maiad would go through its key cycle and its harmonic key cycle and get to the point where it does tachyon cycle, and then it would do its I call it hyperspace thing, but it's really actually just going back to source thing. And then it would rebirth the monad. Tonight, the activations are coming through the planetary shields and through, well, the Eartha shields, through Eartha shields and through the Indigo shields for the rebirth of the monad, because the Maiad keys have reached fulfillment. So when the Maiad keys reach fulfillment, the Maiad goes through its replication cycle, and then it comes back out and rebirths out with the monad. So the monad is going to be rebirthed tonight, and that leaves an opportunity for something to occur that will allow us to expedite the key cycles within our bodies. Because the key cycles, there are certain things you can do to amplify them to a degree, but pretty much they run on their own. When the key, it takes a certain amount of time to generate so many sparks, and then it takes a certain amount of time for those sparks to form the chelon, a certain amount of time for it to reach critical mass vibration. There are occasions where there's intervention given to expedite those processes faster. They haven't said why that they were offering that gift, but it probably has something to do with the little tidbit they gave us earlier that had to do with the rainbow bridge spiral is not holding well, because the Tothian shield has taken a hit from the Thetans, and the Tothian shield is falling. And they were a large percentage of the people who were going to go into the rainbow bridge path. So it looks like they haven't said a rainbow's gone over the rainbow, but I'm wondering if that's coming in Phoenix, if they're just going to, if they're going to give us more on that, because that will be more, that the Phoenix ones tend to combine whatever the subject matter is with grid masters anyway, where we try to keep, like this one was for people who were new coming in, so we weren't going to overwhelm you with grid master stuff and that kind of thing. But we are being offered a gift tonight. You can take it or leave it. It'll be available again if you want it, so it's not like, take it now or you never, or forever hold your pieces. Right? It's not one of those. But it's all connected to this cycle. Now, we talked about the first creation cycle when Source created creation. And all creation actually follows this pattern. Everything goes through these cycles in order to be born into a system. And there are the levels where you go through to be born in the inner world domains. Then from them, you come into birthing into the middle, the core domains, then the inner domains. Then you'd birth into the middle domains. Then you would birth into the outer domains. So it looks like we've probably been at this for a very long time. If we've been out here in the outer domains for as long as they say we have been out here, how long ago did we live in the core? You know what I mean? How long ago were we at that first state? But because time is really an illusion, it doesn't really matter, because that first state is just as close as your thoughts. Because time is a cycle. It's a series of tachyon cycles. Our experience of space, time, and matter all has to do with the holographic projection that our light bodies create. And we share mass experiences of long periods of time that are in a certain pulsation rhythm that give us what are experienced as long flows of linear time in space, time, and matter. But the truth is, time is just a condition of certain angles of light bending. And when you move yourself from one place where light is bending in a certain way that gives you one illusion, and you move yourself into a different space and shift your angular rotation of particle spin just a little, you will see that a time that you felt was one thing looks very, very different from another place. And I think they're going to be preparing us for a bit of time traveling, which is what ascension is, because you are moving through space-time bands when you go up the dimensional scale, when you return to source, when you go through a starfire cycle. You are time traveling, because time is an illusion that is created and held with the light body structure, and you are moving, expanding, and contracting up and down through the light body structure. So when we talk about the first creation cycle, it is not just something way, way, way away in a different time cycle that once upon a time we entered the matrix in. It is also the process by which our cells are supposed to be able to regenerate, so we have eternal life bodies. We wouldn't be ill if our bodies were working the right way. They wouldn't die. They die because they can't produce enough mana to run. They can't produce enough sparks to keep going. At the end of this workshop, they gave me the clincher as I was walking out the door, and I scribbled it on that piece of paper that I held up before. And I knew there was something about sexual energy that was special, but I knew it had been abused on this planet, but I didn't know how exactly. You know what I mean? It was a vague feeling that there was something big there, but I didn't know what it was. And they kind of like just gave me like a paragraph that was enough to go, oh my God, yuck. Right? So that's what they did. What's nice to know is we won't find that out until we find out what we're going to be doing to fix it, at least within our own biologies and at least within the indigo shield. We are going to be doing a bit of bonding with the elemental kingdoms of Eartha, where we're going to have an opportunity to bring into, well, they're already in our bodies, actually. Our bodies are partly made of the Eartha atomic kingdoms as well, but they're blended with a disproportionate amount of the mutated quarks, basically, and the quarks and the atoms that quarks form and that kind of thing. So we're going to be turning on, or having the opportunity to turn on, some of the primary elemental forces, like what does hydrogen really look like when it's not mutated? It has a neutron in it with its proton, all right? There are certain things that are distorted in the earth elements that we are going to be given an opportunity to begin clearing rapidly, and we're going to be having help doing that. If we were just to try to do this with the eartha fields alone, because the eartha fields are still in the outer domain time bands, but eartha still has the capacity to open its hub gates and to open the gates to Eden. And that wasn't going to be done until way later, until Starfire was going to happen. And that would have been the way they got us through. Those who could survive a Starfire cycle, they would bring us through. They're opening the gates. They began their opening, I believe it was in Easter time, in Phoenix, during the Phoenix period, where we had the workshop. But there is a way of expediting that opening, where it doesn't take ages and ages for the gates to open, because gates and chakras and all those things function the same way. They're spirals of energy that depend upon the building of quantum that comes from keys, that comes from spark generation. So they would be going through their spark generation cycles, and it may take, say, 20 years to open a set of gates, or if certain other things are done, it may take 2 seconds, that kind of thing. So I don't think it's going to be 2 seconds, but they are expediting the opening of the Eden gates, and they're also going to be expediting our the training to be able to know how to use those energies and work with them, with the aurora fields and those kind of things. There'll be more on the aurora, they said, in the Phoenix workshop that has to do with the chakras and gender benders and things like that. That has to do more with understanding what has happened to the bodies and how to progressively develop the relationship with the natural elemental kingdom in order to heal your body, so you can begin to get your DNA working the way it's supposed to, so you can, at some point, go visit a place called Eartha as a launching pad. Because Eartha is going through Starfire. It is the part of this planetary body. You could look at it as a part of this planet, but it's more like this planet is sitting in the middle of Eartha. It's almost like we're inner Earth, right? Yeah, we aren't exactly, but it's in conceptual terms we are, because our planet is a set of light body spheres with the matter at the center that is inside of the larger light body spheres and the matter body of the body, the hologram that is known as Eartha. And it would literally be like, they're starting to get bleed through. They're starting to have these things they call mirages, where you see like cities in the sky or things like that, and people say, "Oh, it's the reflection of particles, in the air with light and moisture." Yeah, okay, right? Maybe it's that too. However, not always. There are, if you start to see things like, if you're walking in the mountains and all of a sudden you really see a doorway there, and you really do, and the person sitting next to you really doesn't, it's telling you something about your DNA. It's working, right? There will be a time when you'll be able to see a doorway like that, say, a doorway in a wall, then everybody else just sees a wall, or maybe a mountain, and you will be able to walk through it. Or you would be able to walk through water and breathe it because you found one of the tunnels that there's no water in, or because you did something with your biology that actually allowed you to breathe water as if it were air. There's a lot of things that come with elemental command. One of the first things we'll probably work on is anti-gravity. Yeah. Now, as long as your chakras are mutated and you've got your let's say, sexual parts in chakra terms tied in knots, you're going to be stuck to the ground pretty good. However, when you start undoing that mess that is in the lower chakras, that is controlling the sexual energies, once that begins to heal, we progressively get back our ability to enter the state of Rashalay that will, I'll flip those milars by toward the end. And when you do that, you get the ability to modulate your field and its relationship to the electromagnetism of the planet that you're on. This is going to be great because it's like you'll also be able to regulate your temperature. So if it's cold, you don't have to be cold. If you get heat flashes, you should be able to do something about them and stabilize the temperature. But you also will be able to do a certain thing with your light body once you activate it to a certain way where you can drive it up and down and sideways and vertically and diagonally. You can fly. And I don't know if we're going to have time to get to the point. I would love to just fly over the Capitol without a spaceship and say, hi. Hi there down there, Mr. President. Tickets for a free workshop. Like confetti. I think if we get to the point where we could just hover above the seat, I'd be impressed. You know what I mean? But there will be, it's not going to start now. First, we're going to learn about the sexual energies. We are actually, you might think we haven't talked much about sexual energies, but we did all through the presentation yesterday. The energies we talked about yesterday are the sexual energies. They're just a high level of them. All right, they're the parts of them that are, let's say, more connected directly or more immediate neighbors of the point of creation where the wholeness of God's source and the non-manifest field exists. But these are the exact same energies that we are going to be working with and beginning to activate tonight. Would you keep time for me? Just so I don't, once I get on a roll, I tend to lose track. Well, they have a 12-12. You can keep it anywhere you like, but just bring it out at 12-12 or 5 after so I know. Oh, yeah, your watch is doing funny things. I forgot mine, too. Okay, can somebody be a 12-12 timekeeper? Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, this is just the summary of the tachyon cycle. Eventually, all of these things will have words, and they will be, put in some form of publication, so they are available to you. I don't like to, put these things up on the screen. The type is so small you can't read it. But it's just because it's like a summary sheet where they're all big ones of this. But I would like for you to be able to go home with a chart pack or a book or something. So what was that we just learned? But they're not even ready at that stage. We don't have the numbers plugged into them. We don't know how many keys was that. How many keys is it? How many keys does it take to make a tachyon? We know that one. That's 12. How many cycles does it take to finish the whole thing? I didn't figure that out yet. Okay, so that's why you're not going to get them to go home. But if we can remember that key generation is a very specific function of interdimensional physics and spirituality. It's not something that, the only time you really tend to hear about keys is from the book, The Keys of Enoch, that was channeled here. And it's kind of funny because he insists it's not channeled. But that's all right. That's his business. In that book, Enoch talks about the keys in very flowery Jehovian language that's characteristic of Enoch. And I like Enoch. Enoch and I knew each other for a long, long time. He's not allowed to talk to me anymore, though. Council won't let him. Yeah. He pulled a whammy on me right when I first got in body this time and got me to get involved in order to try to save somebody for him. And it almost wiped me out. So it's like, no, the council said forget it. But anyway, tachyon cycles, key generation. Next one, please. This is just another summary sheet on the expansion stages where we went from the zero axis and the triad to the formation of the taran, the dyad, the myad, the monad. This is the one that's rebirthing tonight because we just finished the cycle of key generation for this one. It's going to keep moving. So this is the one we are rebirthing tonight. That implies we still have all of these levels to go through, and this is on our first level cycle. So what we were doing is we're clearing our mutation in our bodies from the start point, because they were the only frequency strong enough to actually clear the mutation because it was such a deep mutation. Now, we've started this cycle. There will be cycles after this. In the natural key generation cycle, they said there are 4, but at least one of them is what's called a pop cycle, where instead of a spin cycle of expansion, there's a quantum built that's strong enough where it all goes, and it goes, and it like kind of expands out fast. So it's a faster cycle than the spin cycles, where it's kind of like key generation. And so I have a feeling cycle 2 might be a pop cycle, but I'm not sure. They haven't given me information yet on cycle 2 or 3, which apply to the inner and the middle domains yet. But we know that, and I don't even know if we had, I think this might have been a pop cycle coming out into the outer domain. So there's still questions that we need months of transmission to get the answers to. But for now, at least we can understand that we're a part of this expansion cycle. We're going through it in our own bodies. The Eartha core, not Earth core, because Earth core can't hold that activation, but Eartha core is going through this with rebirth and restart of its own Taran that begin with the Tenerife period this February. So just remember, our tachyon cycles create this process, and each one of these expansion stages will have its own tachyon generation cycle, its own key generation cycle, and then the keys become tachyons, and that's what allows the quantum to build enough for the great inhale to happen, where it all goes back to source and then replicates again to come out bigger in the next configuration. So they're all connected. When we get down to here, we have the 20,736 Partakai units that all emerged simply from the phasing of the triad, which was 2 Partakai together. All right? So, and here, the next thing is the Rashala flame. And we went through the flame cycle, and there's another summary sheet that shows you all the stages of what the flame does with its flows and its back flows that make it look like a leaf and all those kind of things. These are going to be progressively activating. There's little ones that activate on each level, those little arcs of energy that come off, the little backflows. And they've been progressively activating as we go along in the cycles. The larger the unit gets that is rebirthing and healing, excuse me, the stronger I would think the feeling of these activations may become. I know that we've been getting spiky heats where it feels like lava skin, like you're buried under lava and you can't get it off your skin, but they only last for like a minute, and they might cycle a couple times a day. And these things are part of the purging process, purging out the elementals of the body that are not able to hold the frequencies of natural elemental frequency. So we're bringing in the natural elemental frequencies through the aurora field, which is like a buffer field between Eartha and Earth, and we're beginning to bring in the natural elemental kingdoms of Eartha. So if you start feeling the funnies, they may start with just bits of just feel shaky, like tremory every once in a while, and it'll come in like waves and then be gone. Or you may find yourself waking up at bizarre hours in the middle of the night, and you don't want to be awake. Or you may find yourself waking up and almost bouncing off the bed because you're so hot, because you got a heat in the middle of the night. And you can be a guy, too, and you think you're going through menopause because it's the same type of chemicals that are spiking in the body when these heats occur. But it isn't menopause. It's causing these things. If you're a female, you may lose your periods. I did, but that had to do with Morocco, where they had to do some major intervention work because I got myself involved with a major astral fight over there and almost didn't get back in body. So they had to do certain accelerations in my body in order to fix me. And it kind of is like, well, okay. I guess I aged 10 years on that one. But, there are certain things I talk about it more now because I'm noticing we feel it more now. I mean, we both get them. And sometimes they're awful. When we first got back from Morocco, I was getting cycles of 15 to 60 heat cycles a day where you couldn't do anything and concentrate because another one had come. And it'd be so bad you had to I'd go where nobody was, or, Faz is there, that's okay because I'm married to him. But literally have to get air on the skin to cool down the chakras. Then you start to feel it where literally the circle where the chakra is would flare. It felt like a jet flare coming out of it. And was it burned? Do I have burn marks on my skin? I didn't get any burn marks. But the feeling was amazing. Sometimes the feet will do it, where you feel like all of a sudden you're going to take off because like mini jets came out the bottom of your feet. So these are some of the symptoms of the activation. They're actually possible. They're actually good things in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. If what you're doing is wanting to clear the mutation and wanting to get back the Christic eternal life potential and be able to go through stargates and ascend, this is the process of healing the mutation and getting the natural energies back in the body. But they can be scary if you don't know that they're occurring. You might think is somebody attacking me, because sometimes it's hard to tell. If something pulsed you, right? So you walk by something that was doing nasty psychotronic frequency stuff and decided to like whack you with an implant or something. It can cause similar type, something like that could cause similar type of unpleasant feelings. But you learn after a while to feel the difference. You can feel of whether this uncomfortable bit that just happened is just, oh, another activation. No, that's mine, and I know it, to where, ooh, I think somebody just did something to me and it wasn't nice. You learn to tell the difference between them. When we begin to work now with the frequencies that we're going to have available to us because of the monadic level activation, because that's it. Once you get into the monad, you have a large phase unit. It only has 12. Well, it actually has 2 sets of 12. I believe the monad is this was the 6, 3, 6, and this is a 12. Yeah, it has 2 sets of 12. There's a 12, 3, 12. So it has 24 Partakai units. One set has to do with the Le'adori side and one with our side, the Le'atori side. But each group of 3 here phases just like the original triad phased. So it's able to generate more frequency than any of the, and more sparks, more keys, and faster than any of the things that came before it. So as we build with these, we will probably get more and more sensation of, yeah, something's going on. I think these techniques are working after all. They're doing something. And I just want you to know about that. Tonight, I don't know what the activation is going to feel like. I don't even know what it's going to look like. It's going to be live, and that means I don't know what it is until they come online and say, hello, we're here, we're ready, and I just talk it. They kind of like, it's like a wave that comes through, and I'm fully here, and I don't channel it. It's as if I pick it up here and then repeat it here. They give it to me here, and I repeat it here. So when we do the activations tonight, and you see me go into that space, and if I go into my Azara space, where it puts me into my Transylvanian accent, just know that's still me, for those of you who might be new here. I don't channel, but there's a level of my consciousness that sometimes comes through that's necessary with some of the data. I have to reach higher. And for some reason, when it hits the vocal cords here and my language patterns here, it turns out sounding like Romanian, actually, I think. I wouldn't say Transylvania, but it has a gypsy flair to it. It's kind of fun. So if that happens, I just wanted to warn the new people that, that's normal for me. Okay, and yes, it is me. So anyway, this is back at the end here. We're up here in the cycle. We're going to be going through these. Can't wait for this one. That ought to be real fun. And what this is going to feel like, I'm really looking forward to. This is the Rashala flame. And when this one goes in its pulse cycle and it's getting ready for replication, it stays in for a bit. And this flame that started at this axis does its rotation to the vertical axis, 45-degree rotation, and that hangs out for a bit. And then what gets born out, instead of just a doubling of this, I don't even know what the quantum yet are of the balls that are the seed cells that form the unici seed atom. But there are 2 sets of 15 cell clusters, light cell clusters, with the flame at their center. Next one, please. Remember, these are just, I'm not going to go through each one. This is just to remind you of the stages of once we hit that, the 0-8 axis of one of those cycles where the Rashala unit, the 20,736, is ready to, it finishes its key cycle and is ready to go in and come out to replicate again. That's when this series starts. And that's when you get the winds coming, the spark pulse currents that start coming out of the entire structure of what is actually the Rosetta at this point, but I didn't show you that yet in the diagrams. Yeah, I did yesterday, but I didn't put it in the sequence before this. So this is where you just understand the spiraling currents that start coming out, then the back currents that come out, and how these together form this flame field, and it's a standing wave flame body, and it's the inner flame body where we have the The flame of Amaraya is the outer flame body that we've worked with Katara 2-3 in activating that. This is the inner, the core flame body. And I think there are 2 other flame bodies. One that goes, this would be the core one. There would be one for inner and one for middle, as well as the Amaraya for the outer. So I think one of them, too, is called the flame of Kale. And I don't know why, but I keep getting that in dream state and stuff, something about the flame of Kale. So we've got to do something with that, and I don't know what it is yet. But it probably works in a similar way. It probably is one of the flames that ends up either in the inner or in the middle with the natural tachyon key generation cycles. These are going to be codes that we're going to use once we get the art done in order to expedite the activation of the keys, because the light body recognizes that through the when you look at something, anything, you're doing optical pineal induction. All right, you are pulling it into the pineal gland through the eyes, and the pineal gland will send that information up and down through the main central vertical current and out through all the chakras and out through the entire light body. So everything you read, everything you look at, every photograph you stare at, anything like that, you are coding yourself. And if there's things that maybe you shouldn't be looking at that aren't good for you, you can still look at them, but learn to glaze. There's a way where you can actually consciously pull a lens down, and you can actually bend it, right? I do this with the TV all the time. We'll be sitting, watching TV, and something will come up with, especially with this high definition stuff they're doing now, where they're like doing these beautiful graphics and beaming stuff at you. This is not an accident. Yes, they're pretty to look at, very pretty. I would hate to see what they're actually doing to you once they get into your system. But you can watch them, and it's best not to look at things directly that you have a feeling it might not be good. Just off a little, off to the side, and don't do frontal with your chakras toward them, kind of like angle, where it's catching you this way instead of like front on or direct side on with the chakras. But you can look at, you don't have to be afraid to look at things, but realize that when you do, you are encrypting. You are putting an encryption of information in electromagnetic form, that behind the electromagnetic form, it has a Jaleesic form. So you are picking up jewels on some level. When you read things, when you sing hymns in church, all of these things, you are directly coding your light body, and your light body will manifest faithfully what you've encoded in. So this has been sneaky for a very long time on this planet. There has been all sorts of stories told, all sorts of pictures painted, all sorts of things to distract the eye and take over the body, and that's not stopping anytime soon. So just know it's there, and realize if you get a feeling, when you're watching TV, if you get a feeling something funny is coming at you, and you're just watching a regular show, it's not the show that's bothering you, just put up a lens that kind of bends this way and sends whatever it is back, where you can still see the picture, right? But you'll actually feel the difference where it won't be hitting you anymore. If you're sitting watching TV and you just start to feel agitated or upset or depressed, and you just catch yourself just feeling bitchy or whatever, and you're not sure why, it may not be anything that has to do with you at all, except for the fact that you just absorbed a certain level of frequencies from the television that had to do with certain programs that they're broadcasting under the programs, and they're literally creating the field agitation in you, and they're starting to take control of your elemental body, right? Because it's your elemental body that gives you all those chemical reactions that you experience as feelings and sensations. So we have an intimate relationship with our elemental bodies. They're not like out there, down there somewhere running around playing fairy. They're here, and they're in our bodies with us. And we might know mentally enough to, let's not stare at that thing on the TV, because it's probably not, that's not a nice symbol, I can tell, right? The emotional body that is made of the elemental consciousness doesn't have that. You have to actually say, okay, come on, we're not going to do this. You have to realize you're dealing with consciousness that is not just you, but it's also cooperative of other forms of hydrogen, of oxygen, of all sorts of molecules. These are conscious, and they don't think in the same way. Some of them do, but some of them, particularly the mutated ones, don't have logical thought like we think of it. They're very reactionary, and they also experience everything as real. There's nothing fiction to the elemental kingdoms. When you watch television and you see a sad story and you get that urge to cry, even though your mind says, yeah, that's silly. I know it's just a story. Some part of you registered it as if it were happening to you. That is your emotional body. That is your elemental body. And you think about what children are watching these days. Think about those nasty little games they're playing with soldiers shooting each other on little computer screens and worse, all those things. total optical pineal induction of very engaging, emotional, charged dramas that are very focused on violence. They are programming it in. They are programming the elemental kingdom in the body to follow those responses. They are kicking up the fight or flight instinct. The fight or flight instinct is a chemical set of circuitry that is basically under the command of the elementals that are in the body. So when we're working with the energies of sexuality, when we're working at the energies of even television, we are dealing with the energy, and all of the energy is directly connected to Source. Now all of it serves the eternal life purpose that was the original and always will be the original intention of Source. So we need to become more sensitive and aware. If we can, be more selective. It's kind of like when you realize if you're eating certain things and you finally realize, like, say, you're allergic to them, and they're really making you sick, and eventually they're going to kill you. You say, oh, okay, well, I might have liked that, but it's not that important to me, There are some energy choices you may want to make at some point. There may be choices as far as relationships go that you may want to make. There are toxic relationships, and it doesn't mean the other person is bad. It's not a blame thing, but there are certain combinations that are not good for either side at the moment. If it's not good for one side, it's really not good for either side, actually. But there are other times when it's just a matter of getting harmonized again, because everybody goes through growth spurts. And if you're together in a relationship and one happens to go through a growth spurt, the DNA is kicking in, the consciousness is coming in, changes your feelings, changes all sorts of things, and the other one's sitting there saying, why aren't you still how you were last week? Like, don't leave me. I don't feel like you're here anymore. And you could be on the other end of that as well, where all of a sudden the person you're with and you thought you were there forever, and they're acting like somebody you'd never met before. It's like, where'd that come from? So you may grow at different rates. Just because you're having a patch where you're not understanding each other in the way you'd like doesn't mean that it's time to abandon ship and that it's a toxic relationship. If you're hurting each other, it's a toxic relationship. If you're knocking each other, through windows and people are ended up in the hospital and this kind of stuff, time for a referee. Time to just blow a whistle, say, you one in each corner, and let's clear this out for a bit and try to find out if this is worth even trying to figure it out, right? So there are certain things that are toxic, and there are certain things that are just uncomfortable that you can grow through, and you're better off growing through because there's actually something good at the end of it. So anyway, back to this. This is why I can have 20 grafts and take 3 weeks. Right? Because it's like the grafts take you a certain place, and that place takes you somewhere. And when I do workshops, I've never had any training in public speaking, you can probably tell, before. I just kind of show up. And they told me a long time ago, my first time I had to go to New York City and do an expo and speak in front of people. And I thought, oh, my God. And they said, just show up. I said, but what am I supposed to talk about? Just show up. We'll let you know then. I'm in the elevator, right? 4 minutes before I'm supposed to go on. What am I supposed to talk about? Just show up. I am up. I'm here. I'm walking in the room. What am I supposed to say? And then, bang, it was like, oh, right. And it just goes. So what you see in workshop with me is that. And it may drive some of you nuts. You may think, I can't stand the way she does that. But I just wanted to let you know that in case I go on tangents, because I leave myself open for the universe. I said, let my will be thy will. Let my words be thy words. Let me be a vessel for thy good works. And if I just get out of the way and say, go for it. What is it you want to do? That's how these workshops go. I would like the time scheduling to be a little bit better. But so anyway, we go through the flame cycle after we go through the starborn cycle. Next one, please. Just wanted to bring these up again because every time you look at them, it begins the little vibration of the encryption. The little Jalesic units in your light body start going, recognize that. Yeah, recognize that. Yeah. And it's because of the proportions that are actually held in it that it can recognize what it's looking at. Now, your light body doesn't see that as black lines on a mylar sheet hanging on the wall. Your light body doesn't see this as three-dimensional. From the level of consciousness that is your light body, you experience this as an energy field. And you don't see the solid forms, you see what they're actually made out of. So this is an oscillating energy pattern when the light body level of self looks at it. When you look at it with the eyes of Rachalet in your own self, that part of your awareness will perceive it not as what it looks like. It will actually experience it when you get, like when you, if you stare at it enough, I would love to do a coloring book with these, because if you play with them enough, just color them and draw designs in them and just have fun with them. They do something. You can feel them, and then you'll find yourself not even thinking about it. Like 2 days later, after playing with it, all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the morning. You wake up and you see it, and it's three-dimensional, more than three-dimensional. It's like gorgeous, fully alive, and you can feel it talking to you. Right? So this is kind of like a photograph that gives you an energy signature link directly into the elemental forces that form these fields, because these are elementals too, but these are core first creation elementals that form these particular configurations of the light body, because they're from the core cycle, the first creation cycle. So there's a lot to the pictures. That's why I take the time to make sure the proportions are holding the math, and to do all the Cathara grids, and to plot all the drawings on the Cathara grids, which is enough to make me nuts. But when you see these, I wanted you to just see them again. There's something special about this setup here, that it was when I was getting the drawing for this to see exactly how those arcs went over, and it's like, are you sure they look like eyes and not leaves? Yes, they look like eyes. Okay. Because sometimes I say, you sure that line goes there? Am I seeing that right? Yes, you're seeing that right. Just do that. Okay. So they coach me as I go. But it was looking at this and drawing this area that created that spontaneous burst of that just absolute love feeling and just complete peace. And it was a peace that was great, because it's like, it didn't matter to even the elements in my body, which, you can get your elements going really easily and get them upset, and they take you on emotional tangents. There was a peace in that feeling of love that made this drama that we're in, this planetary drama that we're in, look like, this too shall pass. Sometimes you want to go on a picnic and it rains that day, and there's another day. There was just an ease about it. And it wasn't about not caring. It was about caring hugely. There's a way of caring that is very different when you get into the Christic worlds. It is deeper. It is more dependable. It is pure. And it is not needy. And it actually might be a little slow in realizing what needy means. So if it runs into needy people, they may get very frustrated with a Christic being, because they're trying to suck energy from you, and you just don't even think about that, because you just don't hold your fields in a way that can happen. And if there's somebody that's used to feeling valued by energy entrapment, by sucking energy off you, and they're doing running their little autopilot games, they won't work with you. And they might get upset and have temper tantrums and blame it on you. What are you doing? I'm nothing. I'm just being me. I'm here. So there's a training that we're progressively, once we start to know our elementals, we're going to go through that has to do with retraining the elemental parts of ourselves that are going to come with us. Because it is actually the emotional body and the elemental consciousness that gives us those reactions. Did you ever notice yourself sometimes where your mind is perfectly at peace, understands the logic of something, and knows better, but your emotional body goes on a tangent? And it's like it just ran away with your physical body, and your mental body is dragging behind, going, wait a minute. Oh, heck. And then you just kind of give up, and you just give up and go with it. And then whenever it's done with whatever it pointed itself at, you kind of sit back in exhaustion and go, oh, whoops. What did I do? Why did I do that? It's because you are a plural, all right? Everything is a plural. Even, these are plural. How many particuli do you think make up that one? At least, I don't know. We'd have to find out how many are in the unici. But you have elements in you that have their own sense of will. It is not actually as free as the free will humans know, or angelic humans and indigos know. It is totally interactionary, cause-effect. It gets acted upon, it acts back. It doesn't stop to think about whether that's a good thing to do. That's why elemental forces can be, let's say, misused and misguided. It's like, okay, let's go flatten that planet over there. If you have one of the nasties directing them, okay, just point me. Sure, I'll co-create with you. It's like, because they don't have the same filters of, let's say, good versus not too good, Christic versus unchristic. They just know they exist. Now, there are certain ones that are evolving into other, into more complex forms. They're not just like a little cluster of atoms that are floating around and interacting with things at will, right? There are all sorts of little kingdoms of, and some of them are very ancient and a lot more aware than human kingdoms are, of elemental beings that some of them are the fairy folk, some of them are sylphs with the water ones. There's all sorts of different kinds. There's also the giants. There are really, 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 really big ones that tend to come from Eartha. And the elementals, when you start to know them, you will not see them in a three-dimensional form like you're accustomed to seeing matter. All right? They're composed of a more refined kind of etheric blend matter. And they're almost like the consciousness behind your atoms. What those light cells, or what those structures behind every proton you have, it implies a particle, right? That kind of thing. They're focused in those structures behind the atomics. That's why you don't see them on a regular basis walking around with you. That's why you don't, close your eyes and see them running through your body and, playing tag up and down your main vertical.